to chair a special session in Delhi in 1923. And he was just 35. Till today, he is the youngest president of the Congress Party, even now. And he was just 3 years old in the Congress Party. Joined in 1920 and became Congress president in 1923. His speech in 1923 as the president of Indian National Congress is extremely important because he speaks about things which I will refer to later on. He talks about nationalism. He talks about, and this is important in today's context, what we have done to nationalism, how we have defined nationalism today, how we have, like, our nationalism today is so exclusivist. It leaves out a large section of our own fellow citizens. Anyway, we are all watching that. But he spoke of nationalism as a hugely cohesive force which can bring together people across religions. And one important thing which he said, which is quoted by lots of people, I have also quoted in my book. He says, if an angel descends from the heaven and lands on the Qutub Minar and gives a call from there that give up the fight for freedom and forget about Hindu-Muslim unity, we will give you freedom. The British will give you freedom. I am not going to accept that sort of freedom. For me, Hindu-Muslim unity is more important than freedom. We can wait for freedom. Once this unity, this cohesiveness, this togetherness disappears, then we cannot bring people together. So that will be my last choice. So this is something which, this was a sentiment of that whole speech he spoke over there in 1923 in Delhi. Later on, there are lots of other things which I can talk in this context, but I will not because I have to say other things. This is like in 45 minutes I can't touch upon everything. Other things which people generally don't know about Maulana Azad are issues like things which he can go back to his childhood for a while, early years of his life. Things which he learned from his father and things which he unlearned from his father. Lots of things which he learned because history teaches you not just to follow what history has taught you. There are lots of things in history which you have to forget, which are not relevant, which need to be ignored. And Maulana did exactly that. He did not go along the inherited, which in Urdu and Arabic is called taqleed. Taqleed means inheritance, things which you have inherited from the past. So he didn't follow the inherited Islam, and I am talking of it because it is more important in today's context of Islam also. What sort of Islam Maulana Azad left for the believers? He questioned the faith of his own father. He was not supposed to talk in front of him. They were all awed by his presence. He was such a larger-than-life figure. But Maulana silently, as a child, started protesting. His father decided to declare Maulana Azad as a successor, as a peer after him. And Maulana said, I am not interested. I just don't want to follow the Islam you want, you follow. I hate the sight of people who come and kiss your hands, who come and touch your feet. I don't want those sort of followers. I understand that. My Islam doesn't teach me that somebody should come and kiss my hands. Why? So he disagreed with his father on this and distanced himself from that Islam which he inherited from the family of his father. Now what happens? He comes to a stage where his antipathy towards Islam takes an extreme form. he almost gives up, and he has written about it. He gives up praying. He can't observe Ramadan. Then I find all these meanings till I understand what all this means, till I read the Quran, till I understand, till I define Islam for myself, and I am convinced that what Quran says is worth following. Only then I will do. And he lived almost for a year and a half without faith. And in that period, he did lots of things. And people actually charged him with all sorts of observations. The scholars of Islam in those times. One of the very well-known Islamic scholars, S Irfan Habib, wrote about him that he is actually like a flower which has no fragrance. That was sort of antipathy, because nobody agreed with what he. It was something very radical to do in those times. You can't do even now, and he did that those times, and he wrote about them. So Maulana Azad faced all this, went through this phase, and after that he comes back to Islam, which he says that this is a refurbished Islam for me. This is an Islam which has come to me with reason, with independent thinking, with istihad. Istihad is independent thinking. And this is all what Quran allows me to do. While the Islam which my father wanted to pass on to me had the doors closed for all this. And when I read Quran, I see that Quran actually depends on reason. Quran says, and the Prophet said in his hadith, that I am leaving behind Quran and giving you mind to think. And Maulana says that today, unfortunately, people have doubted their minds, they have their book. If you doubt your mind, then you can't understand the book. So this is what Maulana felt, that I want to keep my mind open, read the Quran, understand it the way I think I should understand it, interpret it. And so he goes back to this Islam, which was very different from what his father wanted to pass on to him. Now, this is something important in today's context as well. Fortunately, there is Islamic world everywhere. There is so much emphasis on Hafiz of Quran. Hafiz means, Hifz means to cram, to just cram up what the Quran says, ayat of Quran, without understanding. So, Hafiz of Quran and Alim of Quran, they are two different things. Alim means to understand, to knows ilm behind the Quran, to understand what Quran actually says. This is what Maulana emphasized. He said, I don't want Hafiz of Quran to thrive. I want Alim of Quran. I want Muslims to actually read Quran, understand it, and then decide for themselves what Quran actually says. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. And I have disagreed in the book with him, because he could make this statement because he belonged to a privileged family. He had Arabic as his mother tongue. Quran is a book which has come to the believers in Arabic. Obviously, those who can't understand Arabic, that is true for Hinduism as well. Lots of shlokas, hardly any Hindu actually understands. How many people understand it? They only recite. So all these religions take advantage of people because they don't want to vernacularize these texts. Quran again is hardly vernaculized. Urdu editions are hardly popular. There are translations. Have you read? And that is not something religious to do for a Muslim. To read Quran in Urdu or Hindi or English. Somebody who wants to be a scholar, want to learn something about Islam, who is not a believer, can read Quran in English, doesn't matter. But a believer will only read Quran in Arabic Whether he understands it or not, that's not the issue. That is something which Maulana tried to raise. That read Quran, try to understand it in any other language. That has not happened. Modernization has not happened because Arabic became a language of Quran, became sacrosanct. It is still seen as that, which has caused a lot of trouble for the faith, for the people themselves, which Maulana warned in early 20th century. And he himself, which I will talk later on, he himself translated Quran into Urdu just because of that, which is called Tarjuman al-Quran. He could not finish it, he just did partly, published in 1930. That also when he was imprisoned in Meerut jail in 1930. That's where he finished it. The whole process of translation also went through a huge ordeal because he attempted to translate the Quran in 1916-17. The British raided his house, took away all the manuscripts and destroyed them. And Maulana was terribly shaken. Started the process again with a heavy heart, raided again, took away the manuscripts again. 2 attempts. Third attempt, Maulana was very, very despondent to make, and then he writes this thing. When I read about Carlyle, when Carlyle writes that he was writing about French Revolution, and in the revolution his manuscripts were lost, I didn't know how terrible I felt. And then Maulana says, I didn't believe when he wrote this. Then why? You have lost it, you can write again. But when I went through myself, then I realized how awful it is to rewrite what you have already written. So, Tarjuman al-Quran went through this whole process, ordeal, with the British forced him to go through. But finally, he could finish 18 paras of the Quran, and then later on, by time he was part of the political action. It never happened. It was translated into English after by Latif from Hyderabad, and that beautiful translation is available in Now this is something which Maulana did during those times, in the early phase when he was not so deeply involved in freedom struggle. Later on, he could really find time. But his emphasis was on reason, against the police, against following blindly whatever you have inherited. He wrote several times that you need to question everything. Don't accept everything without raising a question. Question everything, whether it is religion or anything else. Knowledge grows only when you question. Whether knowledge is about religion or knowledge is about anything else. So this is something which is full of such sentiments. This is broadly I am saying. I can't get into all the details. This is what Tarjuman al-Quran speaks about. That Tarjuman was not just a translation. It was followed by a commentary. So his own commentary goes along, and he places the Quran in the context which he was living. So that way, it was a live sort of Quran. It was not a dead piece of history. And that's how I talk about history. Whenever I get to speak generally about history, I said I don't believe in dead history. I believe in history which comes alive. There is no point in reading history or understanding history which has no relevance or no context in the times you are living in. You have to locate yourself, or you have to locate history in the period you are talking about. So in both ways, like you have to read history in context, and then that history should be live. You should be able to relate to it. Then only it is relevant and it is worth pursuing. So this is what Maulana tried to do with Quran. He wrote his commentary, which was absolutely contextual. What is happening to Islam? What was happening to Islam in those times? Raised all those questions while he was doing his Islam. When he was doing it, this is something which I need to talk about more seriously. When Maulana was engaged in writing or translating Quran, this was a period of 1920s. 1920s was a time that I have always called 1920s as one of the most important decades for history, particularly freedom history. Because this is the decade which saw the beginning of the first mass movement, Mahatma Gandhi. It saw the founding of the Communist Party of India in 1925. It saw the founding of the RSS in 1925. It saw the founding of the Jamaat in late 1920s. And it saw the surge of labor movement in Gujarat, Maharashtra, on those parts. The first labor movement at a great large scale. So this decade of 1920s, and it also saw birth of revolutionaries like Bhagat Singh, who did politics, who fought for freedom from a different perspective, and left behind a different ideology, different ideas. And I see Bhagat Singh as an ideologue and an intellectual, not just a martyr or a nationalist. He was, but was not only a nationalist. A very complete way of looking at it. Anyway, so this decade was extremely important. When Maulana is writing about Tarjuma al-Quran, in 1924, something very significant happens, where there is a book. There are actually a couple of books which come out, which denigrate Prophet Muhammad. Very abusive books produced, which were polemical, engaging with Islam very abusively. And one of the most important books was Rahil Rasul, which came out from Lahore. And that book led to a huge reaction from the Muslim population. There were riots in Punjab, in Western UP in particular. Huge bloodshed, hatred, animosity in communities, and Maulana was hugely disturbed. And this is the time when he is writing his Tarjuma al-Quran. So Maulana makes a comment which is significant in today's context of the world, not just India. When you see people in France killing people who are making cartoons, you see that Prophet is being, or Islam is being denigrated by the cartoonists, so you go and kill them. Maulana says that I am disturbed, disgusted with the book which has been published, but I am more disturbed and more disgusted by the followers of the Prophet, followers of Islam. They have no business to go and kill people in the name of their faith. They are not bigger than Prophet Muhammad. They are not bigger than Allah they follow. How can they take any initiative to defend the Prophet on his behalf and kill somebody? So Maulana was deeply enraged, and he wrote extensively about it, very openly, very categorically. Which is, I'm raising this because it is so relevant today. It happens. It's happening now only within Islam. It's happening with the other faiths also. Hinduism was not the way Hinduism is today. It was so different. It was so different from Islam. Now it wants to become the mirror image of Islam, the religion they hate. So this is something which is terrible, which is actually destroying religions, Hinduism or Islam, whatever. Islam has been facing this for years, and I have been very critically writing about it. I have written a book also about this aspect of Islam called Jihad al-Islam, long back. But the issue is that one has to keep your critical faculties in place. If you block your brains and follow, whether it is political ideology or religion, it is true for all. Like whether it is Marxism, if you are dogmatic, Marxist, then also you are a problem for the society. If you are a dogmatic believer, Hinduism or Islam, you are a problem. So dogmatism, extremism of any variety, whether in political ideology or religion, is a cause for concern. And Maulana Azad raises these issues in 1930s, which are relevant for us even now, if we care to follow. Unfortunately, Maulana Azad is not even part of the NCRT curriculum, and I wrote about it somewhere in the piece. So he has been thrown out of the NCRT political science syllabus. He is not even taught. And people say all sorts of things, write all sorts of things, make YouTube channels, programs about him very derisively, without even bothering what are they doing. So this is something which we are doing to his legacy which he tried to question, legacy he inherited. Fortunately, we are doing exactly the same to this legacy. We are not even bothered to understand what he has left behind, whether it is nationalism or Islam or anything else. Now his whole career, and I am not talking about chronologically political profile, because that I have not followed anything as well. I just go back and forth. And his understanding of Islam and understanding of nationalism are related, and he explains it. He actually writes an article in 1927 when Al Hilal, his paper was actually closed, and he brought out the paper again, the second series, and wrote a longish article called Islam and Nationalism. And this is something very interesting, and in the book I have dealt with the whole idea quite a detail, where he says that in India, the Muslim League, they are trying to create a nation in the name of religion, on the basis of two-nation theory. They believe that Hindus and Muslims can't live together. There are two nations in one India. Two nations can't exist. And actually, it was not just Muslim League, it was Hindu Mahasabha also saying exactly the same thing in the same times. The 1937 address of Veer Savarkar is exactly the same thing. It says Hindus and Muslims are two nations. They can't live together. This is exactly what Muslim League was trying to say.